there are untold mental health benefits as well with gardening, isn't there? Sort of getting outside, back into nature, and that forms quite an important part of what you want to do as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there is probably any lesson in life that we need to know that couldn't be taught in some way by being outside and in nature and watching things grow and helping and being part of that process. And you can take it at any level that you want to. Just if you're having a rough day, just being outside in the fresh air and talking with other people will make that day better. I've never come back from the park and thought, I wish I'd have just been inside for that hour. And then you can go right into it. After I'd had the conversation with my mum, I went head first into about 1,000 TED Talks on gardening projects that have been set up with children and the benefits that it brings to the children and to the adults. And yeah, on every level, it's been shown to increase mental well-being.
Fantastic. So how will it actually work then? Because you've done all this research and you said you're going to be using existing areas already. So it's not about sort of creating a whole new garden. No. How does it actually work?
So our first project is happening at Arbury School down in Ballabeg, and they've got a beautiful existing community garden with some raised beds, and they've donated a raised bed to the GRIN project. It's open access, so we've set up on Facebook. People are coming along between 10 and 12 o'clock. We're going to do a little bit of gardening. So on Wednesday, we've got some sunflower seeds to plant. A friend's donated some broccoli plants that we need to repot. Our flower bed needs a good lot of prep doing to it. And people will literally come along and contribute what they can on the day. Now, maybe on that day, their toddler might be all about a different part of the garden. They will need to be with them. We've got a little playpen, so if somebody needs to put their baby down just for a couple of seconds, that's great. We've got access for buggies to come up, but people will contribute what they can, and at the end of the session, hopefully we'll have a weeded flower bed, some planted sunflowers and some repotted broccoli.
That is fantastic.
Then we'll have a cup of tea and a song or a story at the end for the kids, depending on who's sleeping and who's not.
That's such a great idea to sort of wind it all up like that, with then again that sort of communication between people and that excitement as well of the kids especially thinking we planted this, and then I presume they'll be able to go back and sort of keep a check on how things are growing.
Absolutely, and at the end of the growing period for the things, I'd love to get the kids around and let them have a little taste of what they've grown, and we'll have our older people there with us who'll be able to direct us on what we need to do when, pass on some of their skills.
This is great, because I've said this on the show before, and we've talked about the idea of sort of growing your own, and genuinely I mark as one of the sort of magic moments in my life. I mark as when I planted potatoes. I wasn't a child, it wasn't that long ago, to be honest, but it was the first time I'd ever grown anything. There is something about going back, checking on them, sort of months and months, and then you go back and you get that spade in the ground and you turn up these potatoes that sort of fall out of the soil. And you think, I made that. I sort of made that happen. And that connection is just so important. And so that idea of them being surrounded by other people who you can sort of share that excitement with as well, it's just, I think it's marvellous. Coming back to something you said earlier about this is the story that your mum was telling you, and the mention of, you couldn't do it now because of health and safety. I want you to tell me about the GRIN risk assessment in relation to that, because I think it's brilliant.
Okay, so I have done a risk assessment, and it's right that I should have done that. It's really important when we're setting up projects, especially involving vulnerable people, younger people, some of the older people in our community, that we do think about all the risks. However, being outside and being active does come with an element of risk. And on my risk assessment, I've moved through all of the accidents that could happen and what we're going to do to prevent those accidents. But at the end, I've put, and not in a sarcastic way, our risk is not allowing any risk. To sterilise our outdoor spaces of risk is to do our children, especially, a huge disservice. I was driving down the prom and I tried to slow down to catch the wording. And the signs all down the prom wall saying, warning, it is dangerous and prohibited to climb on these walls. Now, I understand.
What's the first thing a child's going to do? Climb the wall.
And why not? And I feel that this comes from I think it's a litigation
Yeah.
culture, a suing culture, a blame culture. So if there's a risk where somebody can have something pinned on them, then whoever is responsible for that area tries to sterilise that risk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think we're creating, from sterilising these acute risks, chronic risk of
Fear
children
and-
not
yeah.
being able to use their own bodies, children not being able to develop confidence in themselves. We're getting increasingly overweight young people. And this is because on a day-to-day basis, we are not allowing children to move freely and with confidence. I think that is part of the problem.